Hello everyone, you're welcome to this edition of The Inside on Equinoxe Television. I am Bable Jonathan. The Constitutional Council of the Republic of Cameroon, enshrined in the country's 1996 constitution, was effectively put in place in February 2018 after President Paul Biya appointed its 11 members for a 6-year renewable term. Now, the first function of the team was to adjudicate the results of the presidential election of the October 7, 2018 presidential election in the country. In other words, hearing, judging, and of course examining post-election petitions and publishing official results of the election won by President Paul Biya with over 71.28% of the vote. 18 petitions filed by opposition political parties were rejected by the Constitutional Council. In this edition of the program, we're going to make a scan through the first function, the first public function of the Constitutional Council. Discover our guest in some few seconds. We are receiving a member of the Constitutional Council of the Republic of Cameroon, Professor Paul NKWI. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you.
For the first time, as a member of the Constitutional Council of the Republic of Cameroon, you took part in the electoral process, notably concerning the major election, the election of the President of the Republic on the 7th of October 2000. You took part in the hearing of post-election petitions, the examination of those petitions, and of course the publication of official results. Can we share your experience? How did it go?
Yeah, it was a learning process for me. First and foremost, I'm not a lawyer. And since my appointment, I have made every effort to understand the law. I have made every effort to search for the truth and to fight for justice within the council. As I said, it is a very interesting learning experience for me.
Was it a challenging one?
A very challenging one.
Challenging how?
Challenging on the basis of when you look at the law and you look at the facts and you are mesmerized by the articulation of the nitty-gritties of the law by the legal minds of our country. That really, I found that very exciting. Exciting because they, as lawyers, were able to go beyond the surface of the law and to delve into the reasons why their positions need to be taken into account by the council. And I found that very enlightening.
Now, could you explain to us, Prof, the steps the Constitutional Council took from the moment the results were submitted to it right up to publication?
Let's begin by the approval of the candidates by the Constitutional Council. The selection process of all candidates is the duty of ELECAM. And all the candidates submit their applications to ELECAM. And they must follow the dates and the obligations laid down by the law and also by the electoral code. And once that list is brought to us by ELECAM, we then go through the entire list, verify each of the candidates, their nationality, their standing, etc., etc. And once we to explain to us why it was impossible to pay that kind of money, where he is said to have gone at midnight. But the law does not say that the treasury remains open till midnight to receive who want to pay there. He had to be eliminated. And quite a number of those who were eliminated were really basic things which we based on the law, we had to eliminate them. And eventually, only 9 people fulfill the letters of the law.
Some of them argued that there was some sort of injustice somewhere, that they were not fairly treated.
By whom? By the council.
And the council and elections.
Sometimes people think that the Constitutional Council will perform miracles. My stand has always been, I am guided by the law. What does the law say? If the law says you must submit your file at midnight, or 3 days after, or 15 days after, and if you come 20 days later, just based on that specification of the law, your candidacy is out.
Now, let's talk about the processes or the process of examination and, of course, hearing of post-election petitions, rejecting them, accepting some or not, even though none of the petitions were accepted. Once you received the petitions, what are the steps that you took next to reach?
Once the petitions come in, all the councillors receive copies of the petitions, and they are required to study them. They are given enough time to study them individually. That's the first step. The second step is that we all meet to share our
opinions and views
based on what we have read. We debate candidate by candidate, or petition by petition. And then we go back to the law. We first start by saying, is this acceptable based on the law? And that is why you always say, if you have a local standing, does the law allow you to be here to make that position? If that is said, yes, we receive it, then we study all the complaints, I mean the details of your complaint, and at the final analysis, when we sit around the table, 11 of us, we may not have 11 unique conclusions. There might be 11 different conclusions, but we debate that.
What are some of the differences that emerge between the members of the Constitutional Council during the examination of the petitions?
But basically, like I've told you, and the way I felt, is that we go back to our fundamental basic laws, our Constitution. We look at the Electoral Code. What does the Electoral Code provide for this particular case? If the person argued has fulfilled that condition in the Electoral Code, it's accepted. But if he hasn't fulfilled, what can we do? Let me cite to where in the Electoral Code it is stated that the voting starts at 8 o'clock. The polling station starts at 8 o'clock and ends at 6. Right? That is what is in the Electoral Code. Now we receive information that, especially for the senatorial elections, where at midday they had finished voting, the guy packed his things and left. Did he break the law? Or did he not? According to us, that person, should never have closed the polling station at midday.
Of course, because some people may be coming later.
Yeah, he had to stay there to fulfill the law. How? There could have been candidates coming to, voters coming to vote. So that is some evidence we were able to read from the reports. And the candidate complains that they closed the polling station
before the stated time.
Before the stated time.
Now, despite the heated debate and all the facts and proofs presented in a very eloquent manner and very determined manner by the lawyers of Maurice Kamto of the CRM political party, O.C. Joshua of the Social Democratic Front, Cabral Libby of Universe political party, and even the candidates themselves and the others, all the petitions at the end of the day, 18 of them were simply rejected by the Constitutional Council.
Yes.
Why?
It's on the basis of the law. Let me say that any elections do not begin 2-3 months before the actual elections. They begin now. We're preparing for parliamentary and what? Municipal elections. People may just sit back 2-3 months or a few weeks. They're all mobilizing, expecting to change people's mind. As far as I'm concerned, the next election begins now. Preparing the electorate. Getting volunteers to work for you. For example, a party that turns... How many polling stations do we have in Cameroon? Then there are thousands.
Thousands, about 29,000.
How many parties can conveniently provide representatives in the polling station throughout the nation? How many? Probably a few. To me, that is where it starts. You can only protect your votes by getting people adequately represent you in the polling station. And when they count, they are there. And they know their anomalies. They enter those anomalies in the minutes, in the paper. If you don't have,
but getting all of that,
there will be irregularities. Your votes can be stolen.
No, but getting all of that in place requires a huge financial investment for the parties.
Exactly.
And when government decides to give them just 15 million to do campaign and whatever, and then the rest comes after the election, is that not a handicap for the opposition political parties?
That is a handicap. It's the biggest handicap. And any politician who attempts to run for office and who doesn't have the resources, he's already doomed to fail. Because if he has the means, he can protect his votes and voters. How many volunteers? I remember one of the candidates took additional time to lobby for volunteers to be able to protect his votes. But how many actually showed up to happen. No.
Now, coming back to the petitions, Prof, are you saying that because the parties were not adequately represented in all the polling stations, the facts and the figures, and of course the proofs that they presented to the Constitutional Council were not valid? Does that explain why they were simply rejected?
We kept asking them, if you alert that your candidates were beaten. I remember one of them sent us some photographs of people lying on the ground, right? That they were beaten, they were kicked out of the polling station. That is possible that they could have been. But there is absolutely nothing consigned according to the law in the so-called paid phase. Because in the paid phase, all the anomalies are supposed to be unnoted to permit us to assess the situation. When there is no such information, it is very, very difficult for the council to take a decision.
Now, they presented some of those documents which they received, notably lawyers of the CRM political party. They presented some results that they received. Many of them were not signed. Many of them had lots of irregularities on them, and they were simply qualified by one of the members of the Constitutional Council, who is the president of the National Vote Counting Commission, as fake.
I think that he overreacted. He overreacted. There are quite a few things with respect to what happened. Is that in the vote counting committee, the results of all the polling stations of the divisional supervisory commission were brought in, they were photocopied, and each member had a copy, right? We did expect that during that vote counting committee, for them, all the members, because all the parties were represented, to raise the issues and probably provide the alternative or the false or the true results of a given policy polling station. That would have helped us enormously. That is, if you contest what we gave you within that National Vote Counting Committee as false, you would have said sorry. And that is what we expect, that you will bring us additional information to say what you have provided to us is not true to facts. There have been irregularities or something went wrong. The commission will go through that.
Now, the irregularities, the election malpractices presented by the petitioners to ask the Constitutional Council to cancel the election in, as far as the CRM is concerned, in 7 electoral districts, and as far as the SDF is concerned, the election completely to cancel. The irregularities presented, were they not tangible enough? Were they not reasonable enough? Were they not strong enough to make any impact? Because despite all of that, all of what they presented, all the petitions were simply rejected as unfounded and other reasons.
I think it was, they were rejected on the basis of facts. And we kept saying, your request to cancel the elections must tell us exactly what went wrong and why we need to cancel. Take, for example, in the Northwest and Southwest regions. I think there were strong cases for us to cancel those. There are really strong reasons to cancel those. Because the exercise of the fundamental constitutional rights of the individuals in those two provinces never was probably not the conditions didn't expect people to express that fundamental constitutional right of the individual to choose his leaders.
Of course, that was the main point submitted to the Constitutional Council by the Social Democratic Front
and well as
the CRM political party and others. Yeah. I should indicate that according to International Crisis Group, voter turnout in the Northwest and Southwest region was as low as 5%, and official figures recorded an almost 16% turnout of voters in the Southwest region of the country. But the SDF said no election took place. The election did not take place in those regions hit by socio-political and security crisis for more than 2 years today. And this seemingly did not move the Constitutional Council.
It did. It did. I cannot reveal you the debate that went on after our deliberation, after listening to all the parties and sitting down and looking at the case in Northwest and Southwest. There was more debate on that by the council than in any other. But there was absolutely nothing the council could do based on the figures that were provided to us as election figures from the various. We could not verify whether people voted in whom. For example.
No, you stay in the Northwest region of the country, and you certainly have adequate information on what is happening on the ground, the atmosphere in those two regions hit by crisis.
Yes.
But all the facts and figures presented and proofs presented by the Social Democratic Front were turned down by the Constitutional Council.
I don't think that there's another rationale which states that the presidential election has only one constituency, which is the whole nation. Even if 2-3 people voted in the Northwest or in the Southwest, according to this principle, that part of the country would have voted.
But legitimacy.
But the law does not state what percentage can be used to consider that no elections took place in that given part of the country. Take, for example, and this is probably a theoretical issue, the population of Cameroon is around 25 million. Only about 6 million is registered with ELECA. And how many people voted? No, up to 3 million. Is the entire process legitimate, legal and legitimate? That's a question I ask the lawyer. That we have a president who has a country with 25 million people and only 3 million voted. What percentage that represent? Does it not even drive the people who are ruling this country to reflect?
That puts a question on the legitimacy of the person elected. As O.C. Joshua indicated that, or he qualified the election as an apartheid election that saw the result bringing out or presenting the president of Francophones. And Because the two Anglophone regions did not take part.
They did not
and
take
in one way or the other, like confirming the secession.
I don't want to go down that road because that's a different animal. But that election that we did not participate actually drives to that conclusion, and I do agree with you, because it just gives the impression that the people who are fighting for a separate state for Cameroon are right. Because we didn't bother. Why didn't we solve this issue before the election? It took 2 good years, more than 2 good years. We should have resolved them before, in order to give weight to the participation of all Cameroonians, Anglophone or Francophones, Northwest, Southwest, and the rest of the country. This is one of the things we lose out of. And OC, as well as come to argue that just because of that situation, Northwest and Southwest, elections should be cancelled.
But what is difficult to understand is the fact that some are saying the election took place even though we know the situation on the ground, and everybody knows the situation on the ground. Villages have been deserted.
Yeah.
The people are not there. It's becoming just too difficult and even to an extent impossible for somebody to leave from one village to the other, from one place to the other, to the polling stations and so on. But we continue saying the election took place and the Constitutional Council validates that the election took place.
You're stating facts that I know. I've lived them. And I can tell you that I was flabbergasted to read some of those figures and to ask questions. Did people actually vote in Boyo? Did they actually vote in Mencha? But the people responsible for organizing the elections are saying yes. The Constitutional Council does not organize elections in Cameroon. It ensures the regularities of those laws and regulations.
But it has the power to cancel if those irregularities...
I don't think we have the power to cancel. Yes, we may have the power to cancel if the evidence that we are requesting is provided to us. What was the evidence that Elecam gave us? They brought us a few. It showed that people who voted in home, even though there is rumors that the polling boxes never reach home because those carrying it went through bathmen and they were unable to break through the hurdles that were placed in their way. But yet we have those figures. And we
figures from Batibo and so on. Batibo, which is practically
and
empty
Batibo,
today.
The same. And we in the Constitutional Council, we ask the simple question, how did they vote? Provide us with the information. And that is my position, in the sense that if you say they were voted in those areas, show us the proof.
So the petitions were simply rejected because of lack of tangible proofs.
Yes.
That the people...
There is one thing I need to say, is that this country, the way our laws are defined, they are designed to protect whoever is in power. Yondo Black took the floor for Campton and raise what they call legitimate suspicion. Which simply means that the people who are called to play the referee are themselves biased because they came from a party. The composition of the Constitutional Council is made up of 11 people. 3 that are elected, that are chosen by the head of state, plus the president of the council. That means the council's president is defined, is selected by him. 3 by the Senate president in consultation with his bureau, and 3 by the president of the National Assembly. If you look at the composition of the National Assembly, you will expect that it is the people selected must come from those parties. And that is what Black or Campton and the rest were saying, we don't trust you.
All right, Prof, we're going to come back to that.
No, I'm coming. What I'm simply saying is the way even our law, if you go to Article 51 of the Constitution, is very clear. And it's designed in such a way that the party in power has a full control over the choice of those who make this final decision.
And definitely influence those who make the decisions in one way or the other. We'll be coming back to that in a short while. Prof, let's take a look at what the newspapers reported this week. The press review by Franklin Mwabi.
On what the papers say this week, focus is placed on the Cameroon General Certificate of Education Board, the GCE. The Rambler asks whether the GCE board is over and out, while the post-weekend accuses Biafra for repealing status for creating the GCE board and now transforms it into a parastatal. Meantime, the Guardian Post goes back to the historic Monday, October 22, to ask if the group of 20 opposition political parties contribute to Bia's victory.
Thanks a bunch, Franklin Mwabi, for the press review. Prof, you certainly listened to the Archbishop of the Douala Metropolitan Archdiocese of the Roman Catholic Church, who doubles as president of the National Episcopal Conference, Samuel Kleda, who said that it is hard to believe. In fact, he cast doubts on President Paul Biya's victory in the northwest and southwest regions, and even in the northern regions of the country with regards to the socio-political and security situation prevailing there. And of course, in the northwest region we have the Anglophone crisis, in the far north we have the Boko Haram issue, and added to that we have extreme poverty, hardship, hunger, suffering in those places. And he used this as backing to cast doubts on the victory of the President of the Republic in these parts of the country.
I think it is his right. It is his right. He has an instrument which he used effectively to verify this. And probably he has arrived at this conclusion based on the observers from the Catholic Church. But again, don't forget that the Archbishop himself did not want our president to be here to run. And he advanced quite a number of reasons. That people of our age should, would reach to
sit back and
a level,
take a rest.
No matter even if the will is there, to give a chance to the others. That's what he has been saying. So I wasn't surprised. Although he goes on to argue that even the people who are suffering, he doubts how those could have voted. But I'm only saying, if the Catholic monitoring or the Catholic observers were able to go out there and find this out, he is using it effectively. But I still come back to my original position that to win an election is not 2 months of electoral engineering. We have to prepare the people. The parties who want to win must be seen present on the ground.
Besides criticizing the result of the presidential election validated and published by the Constitutional Council as far as President Paul Biya is concerned, Bishop Samuel Kleda equally criticized the Constitutional Council for accepting those results and for rejecting all the petitions filed by the political parties of the opposition. He thinks that the Constitutional Council should have given those petitions due consideration. What do you have to say about this, Prof?
I told you that there is no decision that we have taken without a thorough fight in camera. We have debated all these issues. But let me say this. The Constitutional Council does not perform miracles. We are here on the top. We produce the final say. But the whole process, all the way down to the voter, we don't control that. But people believe, and probably His Grace, is that we should have stopped. We should have taken an action and nullified the process. On what grounds? That was my biggest difficulty. On what grounds we will nullify? We need some proof. The law is the guide. We need to change the laws. And one good thing which he said, that we need to change the laws before the next parliamentary and municipal councils, which he is admitting is that probably our laws are flawed. But sometimes you simply have to apply the law which you consider as bad, because the way the law was designed, it was designed precisely to achieve the purpose for which it was designed. So I agree with him. And the only way for us to change this country is by changing those laws. And we cannot change those laws if we do not take politics seriously. If we do not take politics as if it's a hobby, where from time to time you hop on it and you run for a couple of weeks and months thinking you'll win. No, it doesn't work that way. And that is why my honest plea is, let's begin to work for the future. I remember Madame Ndoki, very articulate lawyer. I think Kanto had a very strong team. I admire that. I remember
though he didn't yield any.
Grigor Wona stands up and says he brought un avocatier. Instead of an avocat, he brought an avocatier. And the fruits that were on that avocatier were really excellent citizens of our country, good lawyers. The same with with hosting. And we are proud of them. You see, in the council, the decision-making process is a very tough one. We debate. Don't think that we simply dismiss petitions.
Now, talking about the constitution of the Constitutional Council itself, many have been criticizing the Constitutional Council and even accusing that institution of supporting the PR regime, notably the former CPDM members who make up the majority of the Constitutional Council, including the President, Justice Clement Tangana, whose wife is a member of Parliament of the CPDM. What response would you give to these accusations? Is the Constitutional Council supporting the Biya regime?
I don't think you can say we support the Biya regime. Like I quoted, Yonder Black, who is one of our brilliant lawyers. He presented a request for what he calls legitimate suspicion. And he produced 6 names and went on to explain why he considers that the decision of these 6 can never be impartial. He had a very strong argument. Like I said, the composition is designed by the law in such a way that people normally from the governing party would get themselves found on it. That is not the case in some countries. Mali, Niger. Is the civil society represented in the Constitutional Council? No. Most of them, maybe let's take 10, have party affiliations. Not all of them. You have never asked me which parties proposed me. It was because the law says Parliament will choose 3, but they must respect the configuration of the parties in Parliament.
What about you, Prof? Don't you have a party affiliation too?
I had.
Okay, you had.
I had. I came in as an SDF member.
Okay. If you
And I resigned the day I took the oath. And I called my Secretary General, right? And he came and he witnessed the signing and took a copy. Meaning, my neutrality, my impartiality was guaranteed. The question you should be asking others if they did same. But I do expect that they did. And to be honest with you, perceptions can often reveal the truth.
And this is a major problem, because
that is a major problem.
The independence of the Constitutional Council is at stake here.
Definitely. I am saying perceptions, to perceive
with the
and
president,
to suspect.
With the president appointed by one of the candidates.
Exactly. You're going back exactly to the rationale and the debate Yonder Black raised on the floor.
So I'm asking the question, is it possible for you to sit on a chair and destroy that chair?
It's impossible.
No, are you saying that the members of the Constitutional Council are compelled by the law, which you describe as not being a good one, and the fact that party affiliation is equally another I want to say, bad ingredient to validate what is...
Technically speaking, the day we swore, we took the oath. By that act, we are supposed to be impartial. We are supposed to be impartial. But you have to leave everybody to his conscience. And that is why, and that is one of the word that I heard on the floor at the end of the debates by Summer, by Yondo Black, by Ndoki, by all those brilliant lawyers. We have made our case, we leave you to your conscience. Which I thought was, eventually, it is our conscience. I find I've lived my life by following the dictates of my conscience.
Now, when you look at all what happened during the hearing of the post-election petitions right up to the proclamation of results,
Yes.
What's your evaluation of democracy in Cameroon today?
Democracy in Cameroon has been hijacked. At least the word, but the practice is what leaves a lot to be desired. I remember one person stood up from the defense team of Biya and said Biya brought democracy to Cameroon. How did he bring democracy to Cameroon? That before him there was no democracy. Let me probably...
So backing that argument by saying that he's the one who brought multi-party politics and so on.
That's, for them, sometimes you begin to feel that democracy for them is a multiplicity of parties. We have at least 200 and something. That's not democracy. Democracy is giving people the unique chance in expressing their fundamental constitutional right to choose their leaders. If you deny them, there's no democracy. And the people of the Northwest and Southwest were denied because they didn't go out massively to vote. We publish the results. You saw that in the Northwest it's only 5 point something percent of the entire electorate in the Northwest, which is 660 something thousand. Only 5%, which is about 5,000, voted. What happened? In the Southwest, it's 15%. What happened? That means thousands and thousands of them were denied that fundamental right. Is that democracy? I wanted to maybe go off from and reflect on sometimes what I see in Cameroon and see elsewhere. Is like when people come to power, they never want to leave. It's like when you appoint a chief in the village, he is there until he dies.
Only death will take you off from there.
Yes. If Cameroonians were to be brought into this kind of philosophy, that you're a chief for life, you don't give me 5 years, 10 years, 7 years, and then tomorrow you say I'm no more chief. Is that African? The African concept of democracy is you choose the person, right? You give him powers, he's there for life. But then you create institutions to control the use of that power. And in some African societies, when the chief goes out of the way, he's simply taken out and people are informed. That is not the kind of democracy we want. But there are two kinds of ethnicity which I saw during these elections, what I call moral ethnicity. There's nothing wrong for you to be a Bulu or a Bamileke. And you heard how that was played during the
hearing of post-election petition.
Absolutely, there's nothing wrong. But if you use your Buluness or your Bamileke-ness as a mechanism of exclusion, then that is bad. That is what I call strategic ethnicity. And that, again, is significantly not good for our country, especially when you exclude certain groups of people and privileges other groups of people. If you look at the media, the social media, and the list, the major functions in this country, they all belong to one group.
We're going to take interviews of the week right now, and when we come back, we'll talk about the building of the residence of the President of the Constitutional Council.
All attempts to disrupt public order will be handled with firmness. Perpetrators, likewise those they would have incited in joining them, will have to answer before competent judicial institutions. All those who will attempt to violate the laws of the Republic will answer before the law courts and be rigorously treated by the same laws.
We saw in the TV people discussing, exchanging without any constraints. A very good thing for Cameroonian. But when somebody is treating the others like Satanists, I'm asking if that Cameroonian is not mad when he's saying like that.
I'm really taken aback, and I don't know whether Cameroonians have been hypnotized, that the incumbent in Cameroon, who campaigned for just 22 minutes, has 71.28%. I've never seen that anywhere in the world.
We want to thank you sincerely from the bottom of our hearts for standing with us, standing in support of the party, and standing in support of the candidate we had in our party, President Paul Biya.
Really? We cannot progress in a country without peace. We need peace in this country. Let him see first by solving the American crisis.
We are afraid of war. Everything is not as we wanted, but as the new president is elected now, we want him to create peace.
The preparations are afoot. We have various subcommittees that are working, like the finance, the communications, the logistics. So everything is afoot. And as far as the separatists are concerned, they are not banners up against it. They also had their own reservation that were expressed, which are being taken into consideration, and we think they will be part and parcel of the Anglophone General Conference.
We have been suffering for about 30 years now, time and again writing to our ministers, our president. A call is being given, but we don't see the money. And we have been suffering and suffering. Children not going to school. And we are all going older and older. Myself, I was not in this age, but look as I am. No means of living. So we've seen that we are abandoned. So we now cry to our people that they should look eagerly into our problem.
You're welcome back. Professor Paul Kui, member of the Constitutional Council. Just 2 days after the proclamation of results, information went out that the House of the Constitutional Council president was going to be built, and many Cameroonians have interpreted this as a reward to Justice Clement Atangana for validating the victory of President Paul Biya. And I want to ask you the question now: whose residence is going to be built with state money? Is it the residence of the Constitutional Council president or the residence of Justice Clement Atangana?
What you are saying actually appeared on Cameroon Tribune. So it's no more rumors. I actually discovered it myself and I was terribly surprised. It's something really in bad taste. Because here people have been accusing all along the way for being impartial. And right 2-3 days later, you publish this thing. Why? It's something in bad taste. Because we as councillors are asking, why build in a residence when the council itself does not have offices? Which is more important? At least the councillors are not like me, who doesn't have a house. His house was burnt. He's comfortably, most of them are comfortably lodged. But I think, my personal opinion is, whoever decided that they should build a residence for the president, fine. But they should have thought about building the headquarters of the Constitutional Council. We don't have offices. We're purging in Palais de Congrès. And you should see the tiny cubicles in which councillors are expected to sit and reflect. They're not comfortable. I don't know. This is something in bad taste, really.
No, I want to really
But
get
the residence is for the president of the Constitutional Council. It isn't for
Justice Clement Atangana.
No.
Means all other presidents who will come after him
will be living there.
Will be living there.
Yes.
That should be abundantly clear. Now,
but again,
what explains the fact that what you are now